Welcome to Al Bernstein Unplugged on Boxing. In a 40-year Hall of Fame career, Al has chronicled some of the greatest moments in boxing history. On this podcast, you get to hear him expand on those memories and talk about the current news in the sport of boxing. You also hear Al interview some of the biggest names in the sport. Here's Al Bernstein Unplugged.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. So happy you joined us. On this episode, we're going to be talking with Amanda Serrano, who, of course, is not only a great women's boxing champion, but also a delightful and engaging person, and I think you're going to enjoy the conversation. And among the things we discuss are the efforts that she and Katie Taylor made to fight. That was a failed effort. It didn't come off, though she's certainly hoping to do it in the future. And Amanda Serrano tells her view of what happened in terms of that fight not being made. There's, people have had some controversy surrounding that, and she has a chance to tell her side of it, and she does in great detail. And we also talk about a lot of other things as well about her role in the sport of boxing. In addition to that, of course, we're going to answer your questions, and to help me do that, let me bring in my partner in crime here, my co-host, Mr. Trip Mitchell. Trip, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Al. And every week we do a TV show and a podcast, videocast on YouTube. And before I get to what we need to promote, in the TV show, we were talking today about the fact that boxing is a 12-month-a-year sport. Does that make it tougher as an announcer? Do you feel like you're always in it, or does it make it easier that you don't have a big break?
It's a good question. I decided very early in my career that because boxing had no off season, people got no vacation from you. Which is really, it sounds silly, but it's true. If they like the sport, they're going to see you over the course of a whole year. So hopefully your style and what you do will wear well enough with them. And whether rightfully or wrongfully, I actually took that into account in terms of how I kind of approached doing the sport. And some would tell you that that was a good thing, and others will tell you it's not. But I felt like I needed to make sure that the things I was doing were not the kind of things that would, over time, wear on people the wrong way. So I actually, and I think you don't get an off time, although sometimes there are breaks. But I think that's better, actually, because you don't have to come back from long breaks. And as a broadcaster, I think that helps you.
So when you were doing basketball and stuff for ESPN, did you find that really a burden to do the boxing and the basketball, doing play-by-play?
Well, I loved doing the basketball, and I did a lot of Big Sky Conference games. And so, part of the problem was I was doing the boxing usually on Thursday nights, and then sometimes I'd fly right to one of the places where I was doing basketball. And that conference, of course, you're going into, often in the winter, places that you can barely get to in the first place. And, there's snow and there's travel complications. So that part was a little bit tricky. And then, of course, the fact that you had to come right from doing the boxing, and you had a short week in terms of getting ready to go back out on the road and do another boxing show. But I God knows I wouldn't complain about it, because it was a lot of fun, and it was a great time. I really enjoyed doing it.
Well, fantastic. We'll get to the questions, but first, we want to mention the fact that we do a TV show on some amazing networks. Thanks to Kelly Kantz, your manager, 80, for setting all this up, and we're on some really great TV networks.
We are. For folks that want to watch our TV version, which is slightly different than our podcast, we're on a number of networks in the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean, including Fight Network, which is on in Canada and the United States, U2 America, AMG Network, and among others. And it's intriguing because it's an interesting collection of distribution platforms that we're on, and it gives us a chance to kind of reach across America and up, as I say, up into Canada and the Caribbean. So check your local listings, find out when the show is on, and check it out, and we hope you'll tune in.
Are you ever going to wear a tie on the TV show?
That is that's a very valid question. I've probably been on TV tieless on that show longer than any time I've ever done television. So that is a good question. Do we want me to wear a tie?
No, but
Yeah.
we do need to do a wardrobe change between the TV show and the podcast. Just
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'll ask. Maybe we'll put that as a poll question to our viewers. Do you need me to wear a tie on the television show?
just as a quick adjunct, we were doing arena football in Vegas. ESPN2 came in and was doing the same game, and uh, uh, a number of their announcers were so happy because on ESPN2 you guys didn't have to wear ties.
Right, that was their big thing at the time. Think about that now, how quaint that is. When we did ESPN shows and we did our boxing on ESPN2 a couple times, the big thing was that was going to be the hip network where nobody wore ties. So and so you didn't wear a tie on that network.
Okay,
Now
well,
we think about it, it's silly, but that was the way it was back then.
okay, Tylus Al will answer this question from Blarg Jargon. Glad the Angelo Leo Stephen Fulton fight is back on. What do you think of that fight?
Excellent fight. That's going to be on January 23rd. It's for the WBO Junior Featherweight Championship that now Angelo Leo has because he beat Tremaine Williams for that title. He was supposed to fight Stephen Fulton Jr. Months and months ago, and it was going to be the first show out of the box coming back from when we were off due to the pandemic. And Stephen Fulton got COVID, so he could not fight. And now that match has been made. Everybody who knows boxing knows that this is a 50-50 fight, which is likely to be a barn burner. They're both undefeated, and Fulton has beaten 7 fighters who themselves previously had undefeated records. And Angelo Leo has become one of the best body punchers in the whole sport of boxing. And Stephen Fulton Jr., a very slick boxer, terrific counterpuncher. Their styles mesh up perfectly, in my opinion. And I think that everything about that fight screams out that it will be an action affair and a terrific matchup. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay. Our next question comes from Some Came Up. Excuse me. The English is tough for me today. Triple G, Canelo 3. Has it hit its expiration date? Every day I read different reports.
Yeah, that fight, I guess the question you have to ask yourself in terms of that question is, or the way you have to look at it is, has it hit its expiration date, A, in terms of the commerce of the fight, making it and making the fight happen in terms of business? And secondly, has it hit its expiration date in terms of whether fans want it? Now, the first one is in question because I don't know if they can make it now. The first fight was back in September of 2017. The next one was in May of 2018. And a lot of time has expired in between and much has happened. And Canelo's up in a weight division above where Golovkin is. And so there are a lot of issues about that. Do fans still want to see that fight? I think the answer to that is yes. They do want to see a third episode. The first 2 fights were wildly exciting and razor thin in terms of their outcome. Everybody, has an opinion and debates the outcome of those 2 fights. And so fans want to see it. Now, the other issue is Golovkin's age. He's 38 years old. And the question is, how much longer, if this fight gets delayed, is it viable because of his age? Not too much longer, I don't think. So to me, it's a 50-50 chance that we're going to see that third fight. And I think it needs almost to be the next fight they have.
Okay. And one more question here, and then let's see. This is from Craig. Would you pay to see Khan versus Brook, or is it too far past its expiration date?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. To be honest, I think way too much water has gone under the bridge. Both of those men have declined in terms of their their overall skill. That fight 4 or 5 years ago, or even before that, was a huge fight in England and elsewhere. But I think too much time has passed, and so that one I would say is past its expiration date. We have a lovely guest on for this week's show. She's a terrific boxer and just as good a person. Here's my chat with boxing champion Amanda Serrano. Amanda, you started boxing at about age 17, I believe, and your sister, Cindy, had already been a world-class boxer. How much of an influence was her involvement in the sport a part of you wanting to get into it?
I mean, she's a big influence. If it wasn't for her and Jordan, my trainer, I would have never been introduced to the sport of boxing. Knew nothing of it until she started. And like I've always said, my first job was at the gym, and I just watched her and her success and her growth in the sport. It really pushed me towards that way to like just to try it. I mean, I knew it was hard. I didn't want to try it at first. And then I said, you know what? After I graduated school, I graduated early. I said, what am I gonna do now? I wasn't a school person, so I said, I'm not gonna go to college. So I said, let me try it. And then I fell in love with the sport, and there was no turning back now.
When you started it, did you have it in your mind that I wanted to make a living at this, or was it first I want to do boxing to see if I like it, or did you so real early in the process say this could be something that I could do as a profession?
Not at all. I just did it, I guess, to have something in common with, because I was always in the gym. So I wanted to have something in common with Cindy and Jordan. Since I was always there, I said, let me try it. But not at all did I even dreamt about having the success that I have now. It's funny because I just threw myself in there for just, I guess, not for fun, but just to try it.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Sometimes I think about it now, and me and Jordan talk, and we're like, "Wow, look how far we've come." It's kind of funny, but no, never thought that I would be making a living out of the sport of boxing.
So in the meantime, you turned professional as a fighter in 2009 and carved out an 11-year career to this point that has included multiple world championships. In world title fights, you have an amazing 11-1 record, and you've put yourself right at the pinnacle of the sport. When you won your first title, what was that like, and how did you process that emotionally? That had to be a remarkable thing. You did it, I think, only 2 years into your career.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. It's funny because like to this day, I still don't know. Not that I don't appreciate, like I still don't understand the impact I've had in the boxing world and the female world, as well as in my family. Like sometimes I still feel like I'm an average girl, like just just fighting just to make a buck or two. But to win the first title, I was like, I still didn't understand. I still didn't understand what that meant to win a world title.
Right.
And it was just back. I was happy because, you know, of course you love to win, and, you know, it was for a belt. So I was excited. And then when we started making, you know, the name in Puerto Rico, I was like, wait, I mean, I want to be a bigger name in Puerto Rico, and I want to continue to open doors for females. So I was like, okay, let's see how that's going to work. And I was super, super excited. And it was just something out of, you know, even where every world title means something. But of course, that one meant it was the start of Amanda the Real Deal Serrano.
Yeah. You became, of course, over time, one of the most recognizable names and one of the top boxers. And I think this is something that we're going to talk about a bunch of different things, but this is one that boxing fans are fixated on, as you well know. The fact that there was a super fight between you and Katie Taylor, who's a couple of divisions above you, was so close to happening. So I guess there's two, and you know, people on the Twitter universe who, you know, who obsess on these things, talk about it constantly, as you well know, and probably on other social media platforms as well, and through the sport of boxing. So I wanted to give you a chance to do two things. Tell us, what you think the chances are of that fight still happening. And secondly, I hate to go back in reverse, but I think it's kind of important, maybe from your standpoint, to tell people why exactly you think that kind of went south before, because everybody has different versions of things and everyone has a viewpoint. What happened to make that fight kind of end up not happening, and what are the chances in the future?
Okay, so you have a couple of minutes for the
Yeah,
story?
no, please feel free to explain it
I
at
just
your own pace.
Okay, I have a feeling that this fight, in my point, I want this fight to happen 100%.
Yeah.
110, 20%. In my part, it's gonna happen, but it's only gonna happen if that fight, everyone is saying, is a 50-50 fight. So the numbers should show that it's a 50-50 fight. No, I'm not asking for half of what Katie is making. I know Katie Taylor, she's a great champion, a great fighter. She has the best promoter, like not the best, but she has the a great promoter that's backing her up, as well as she has Ireland. So she has, people backing her up. So I understand she can make whatever she wants to make, but I'm asking for something that I deserve. I think I deserve to make. So, okay, that's that. But leading back to why this whole fight canceled, it's a long story. We've signed multiple contracts for this fight, and meaning like 2 years back. We've gotten actually threats. Actually, the day before the fight with Heather Hardy, I was threatened that the fight wouldn't go through if I didn't sign the contract to fight Katie Taylor for $150,000. It was 150, 120, yeah, $150,000. So he was like, we trained so hard to fight Heather Hardy. So he was like, why are you doing this now? And their promotion told us that this fight is not really needed. So if you don't sign it, with this fight is canceled, as well as the Katie Taylor fight. So we wanted the fight with Katie Taylor. So we said we signed it for 150, and then the fight went through and whatever. So then we fought, we won, whatever. And then Katie Taylor decided, we were supposed to fight year-end with Katie Taylor. Then she decided to go up to 140 and fight in that division and win a title there. So it was like, we thought that was going to be our fight, the ending of 2019. But that didn't happen. So we decided, so she can stay active. We want to stay active as well. So we was actually training for MMA fight in the beginning of January, in Puerto Rico, my homeland. So that fight fell off. So we begged and we fought with DeBella and Eddie to give us like a tune-up fight, so we can, because the fight with Heather Hardy was at 126. So we wanted to work our way up at 135.
To get up and wait to fight her. Yeah.
Yeah. So we decided, let's get a fight at that 130, 132, so we can, work our way up. And then they gave us that fight. Over in Miami, they asked us, if we take the fight to Manchester, will you take more money? And we said, why not? It's the same girl. So
it was to take the fight over.
Yeah.
And if you take it, they would give you more money.
Yeah. I mean, if the fight is in Manchester, they'll give us more money. And we said, yes, it's the same girl, same. It didn't really matter. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and the same way everyone on social media found out that the fight was canceled on May 1st was the same way I found out. And it's not fair. Never got a phone call from either my promoter, from Eddie Hearn, nobody.
So nobody contacted you to
nobody at all. The same way you found out is the same way I found out.
Okay.
And that's when Jordan, well, of course, my manager, he went ballistic. I mean, we understood it was a pandemic. Everybody was hurt in this pandemic. And so we was like, okay, but they pushed it back to July. Without telling us, they pushed it back to July. And once again, when that fight in July happened, was canceled, never told us, never gave us a call. And so it was like, and we never, from May 1st to July, there was no contract signed again. Once, if anything is changed in a bout, you have to re-sign a contract. So we never got a new contract, and it was never signed. And then we trained through this whole time from the year end 2019. We was training for the fight in January, and then I never left the gym because we knew we had Katie Taylor in May. So we was training really hard. I hired a nutritionist because 135 is not my natural weight. So I wanted to maintain good muscle and good strength for that weight. And I know I was fighting Katie Taylor. So we hired nutritionists and we was training really hard. I had a great camp. And then the fight fell off, and then it was rescheduled to July, and we found out on social media, and then that fight was canceled indefinitely. We didn't find out. They said we're not gonna until people are able to go into the fights. So we didn't have no idea when the fight was gonna happen.
And then when they came back the third time, it was for a deduction.
Yeah. So then that fight we didn't know, and then all of a sudden they came back and they said, okay, the fight is in August, but you have to take less money. So it was like, I mean, we still fighting the same girl. And, I think from the very beginning, they offered us the 150. And I think they was determined on just giving us that 150. I guess that's what they felt I am worth. I mean, my manager, my promoter, I know they don't feel that I'm worth that much. I definitely don't feel that I'm worth that much, but we were still willing to fight her for that amount. And so Jordan was really, really ticked off with everybody and everything. So he was like, you know what, we're just not gonna take the fight. Let's wait till we're able to allow people to come in, so you guys can make money, so they can pay what we feel that we're worth. So that's the whole story with that. And yeah, like I said, I'm not willing. I mean, I don't care about the 50-50 with Katie Taylor. She deserves whatever she makes. The pot should be at least for
60-40.
Yeah, 60-40.
If it's a 50-50 fight.
Yeah. If it's a 50-50 fight.
Why are you going to get an 80-20 cut?
Yeah. So that's Jordan in the background. If it's a 50-50 fight, why should we get an 80-20 cut? Because, it's a great fight. It's going to be a great fight. And people are definitely going to tune in for that fight, and I think I deserve that. I'm a 7th division world champion. Why not?
So your position is that regardless of what she makes, you want to make what you think's appropriate for you.
Exactly. Okay. I'm not acting for the same amount that she's making. And people need to understand that.
And so, moving forward on this, you're still interested in the fight, obviously.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
And what's your feelings about the possibilities of making it? Clearly, we're going to be moving back into a period, and are starting to move back into a period where it's conceivable some fans could attend, and there'd be other streams of money that might make it more feasible. Are you hopeful that in 2021 the fight can be made?
Oh, definitely. I think so. I mean, everybody keeps asking for that fight. Even on her end, people are asking Amanda Serrano. And I believe she wants to fight too, because Katie Taylor, she's a true champion and she wants to fight the best. And so do I. And it's not that we're afraid of each other. I'm definitely, if we was afraid of each other, we wouldn't be in the sport of boxing. Sure. We get punched in the face. So sometimes like all female fighters, they're just afraid of the amount of money that they're being offered. That's the only fear not fear, but that's the only thing that would stop them from taking fights. And in this case, that's what it is. I feel like it was treated a little unfair, but I think it will happen, and there's no doubt that people want to see that fight. So it's gonna happen one day.
Absolutely. Well, it was a good, solid explanation, a detailed one that you gave us, which is good.
I probably still left some details out, but
no, you believe me, you did a good job of explaining it. So I wanted your side of it and you to be able to tell. So on our last Showtime boxing show, I committed a faux pas. For which I rightfully apologize. I was talking about champions from Puerto Rico that had come from Puerto Rico, current champions. And this is a period where there have been fewer champions from Puerto Rico than we are normally accustomed to seeing. And I mentioned that Wilfredo Mendez was the only champion from Puerto Rico currently a world champion. This, of course, neglected to mention you, who were born in Puerto Rico, even though you came to the United States at a very young age. And you rightfully pointed out that I had neglected you. And I did apologize, which you graciously accepted, which I'm very happy about. it is interesting, though. I'm going to use that as a talking point and a learning point, because I'm probably one of the people that among the the people doing boxing and announcing boxing who takes an interest in women's boxing and respects greatly the women that are in the sport. So I think it's almost an interesting flashpoint that I would make that error and not think that way. Is that kind of a maybe the problem with that is that's kind of a truism that we aren't yet at the point where the people covering boxing remember or know to always think about including women boxing in their conversation.
Yes, 100%. I feel that we are neglected. But not to say you wasn't the first one to do so. I mean, it's happened, it's happened many of times before. Actually, at one point, me and my sister were the only champions. And they said there was no champions from Puerto Rico. One
Right.
time a man was fighting,
Right.
and me and my sister were the only, at times it was only females that were holding Puerto Rico up,
Right.
and defending them with our titles. But it happens. So I mean, I think we're just we're forgotten. I guess when male fights, they don't want to mention females. But in a case like that, like talking about champions, I felt, yeah, I mean, I was pretty shocked that it was coming from you, because I know you're a big fan of mine as well, and I'm a big
Yes.
fan of yours. So I was like, I was
Well,
just
the only defense I can make is that for some reason, I guess I was so fixated on there. And I'll tell you something funny. I think of you as an American boxer, even though I know you're from Puerto Rico. And so it didn't pop into my mind. And it was an error. It's funny. I thought about it afterwards, and I was, appalled that I made the error. But we had Steve Fard and I talked about it afterwards. We had put all the information down, and we meticulously go through everything, and somehow it just slipped through the cracks. So, but it won't happen again. And I will deliver. And I will deliver on air on January 23rd on the Showtime show, which is the venue where I did it. I will deliver another apology. So,
well, I thank you. But I just hope, I hope you can set an example for other commentators and journalists. Please don't continue to allow females to slip through the cracks. We're here,
right.
and we're going to continue to make statements.
It's a good point, and it can be a learning experience, which is what we should always use those kind of things for. Now, you mentioned earlier that you're an MMA fight that you were getting ready to do, and you have trained as an MMA fighter and had some MMA fights, mixed martial arts, and we live in an era now where women boxers can make more money in theory, or mixed martial arts for women is a little more lucrative. How did you determine that you wanted to make sure you were available to mixed martial arts, and what went into that decision to train for that?
It was definitely had to do with the money and the respect. I think boxing should take a page out of MMA, because in MMA they get paid equally. They're everything is done equally. At one point, UFC, their biggest athletes were female fighters. They were getting paid more than the men. I mean, it would be kind of cool if boxing did that, because that was, that's my first love, and that's what I've been dedicating my life for so many years to do it. But when actually, it's funny, because at the time where I had my MMA contract, it was bigger than my boxing contract. So that's why it kind of persuaded me to go to MMA faster. So I was like, why not? It's crazy. I'm multiple world champion in boxing, and these people are giving me a lot more than I'm doing in boxing. So that definitely pushed me into going to MMA. And I'm definitely going to continue to do to train and fight MMA. Right now I have some goals in boxing, but if an MMA fight comes along, I'm definitely gonna take it, whatever comes first.
And so your theory on this is that you can, because you're of course so established in boxing, you can take those boxing matches, but you can dip your toe in both waters in a way to see which direction it takes you in for most of your fights.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not easy because it's two different
Two
sports, you
different
know.
disciplines,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Switching from one sport to another, it's really hard. You have to have a strong mindset, and you have to know when to switch it. So it's definitely not easy. I mean, I'm putting so much pressure on myself. But you
Yeah.
know, in female boxing, you have to do what you have to do. I mean, wherever I'm able to get opportunities and money, I think that's what my team is going to prefer.
What was the hardest part about uh, getting into the MMA? Obviously, every boxer, like in the case of Holly Holmes, she had been a kickboxer, and that
Yeah.
helped her in the transition. But you have to learn jujitsu, how to defend takedowns. You have to learn all those things. What was the hardest part of getting yourself up to speed so you knew you were at least capable of doing an MMA fight, even if you didn't know all the disciplines?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people don't know switching from boxing to MMA. I'm only allowed to use like 20% of my boxing skills in MMA because it's like you said, there's kicking, there's knees,
Right.
there's elbows, there's eight points of striking. I only had two. So
Yeah, right.
people think just because I'm a great striker and I'm strong that I'm able just to go into MMA. No, especially in my first fight, I learned that that wasn't true at all. I mean, if you saw my first fight, the third round, the girl took me to the ground and nearly killed me, but I survived. And I came back and I decided, I said, this is a hard sport and I need to go win and I need to perfect what I'm not great at. And it definitely
Yeah.
was wrestling and jiu-jitsu. And I know that I can't just rely on my hands because it's like I said, it's only 20%.
Interesting, yeah, and a lot of people don't understand the nuances of that, but and it also speaks to how hard it is to be in boxing and MMA, at the same time and try
Right.
to handle that. What's next for you specifically? What do you think for this 2021? What do you think your next bout is going to be, and where do you think? What do you see it?
Well, I mean, you know, with everything that's going on, not everything is guaranteed. But I'm definitely our goal is to unify in my division, 126, the division that I feel most comfortable at. Definitely want to become undisputed champion. So I mean, I am Jelena's, she's a WBC and WBA. I am her mandatory. I'm the WBC interim champion. So, I mean, she just had a fight and she got stitches and stuff. So we're not sure if that's going to happen. But there's also the IBF champion who she agreed in December to fight me, Sarah Mafu. And that fight just fell off completely. But she was willing to fight me then, so we're hoping maybe that fight can happen early March in Puerto Rico. So that's what NBC is it?
Yeah.
NBC. That's what my promoter Lou DeBella is working on now. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully we can become undisputed champion, and then maybe that fight with Katie Taylor will be even better. I'll be a 7-division world champion, undisputed champion, and she'll be undisputed champion, and maybe I'll be worth more this time.
Well, that's interesting. It's true, and you have some good challenges in your division, so a win would make it would help market that possibility for sure. You're going to have a fight in Puerto Rico. Do you? I imagine fighting down there and getting the support of your home, the place where you were born, and you were very much a part of the culture of Puerto Rico when you moved to New York in terms of the neighborhood you lived in and everything, and you speak Spanish, and so it must be a kind of a thrill to be able to go there as a champion and kind of bask in their support.
No, the best. I mean, I fought there, I believe 3 to 4 times, and I will have to say that's the best place to fight because it's honestly is genuine love and support.
Yeah.
Because here in New York, of course, you have to, as a female, you have to sell tickets, and it's just that's a headache. But over there, I don't have to sell one ticket. They come in just to see me, just to see their athlete and their champion. So it's amazing, and I just love to continue to win and become a champion. And we're hoping that this will be a unified bout. So that would be even greater. And to point, I really want to be undisputed champion because Puerto Rico never had an undisputed champion. I think the most we had was Tito Trinidad, that he was he was unified champion. And so I want to be able to give Puerto Rico the first undisputed champion.
I didn't know that Puerto Rico's never had an undisputed champion. So
No.
that's
Only
interesting.
unified.
Yeah, only unified, which was Tito. He only had two, I believe.
But he didn't have every title. Interesting. How much longer do you see yourself? You're 32 years of age, but a young 32 for sure. How much longer do you want to see yourself in combat sports?
I give myself two more years, 3 more years max, because of 2020 it pushed us back.
Sure.
But definitely like 2 to 3 years. I want to be able to enjoy my life at 35. I want to have my house in Puerto Rico and just sit on the beach and just enjoy life.
That's nice. So you plan on going back there?
Yeah, I definitely want to get a home over there.
That's great. Well, you are you're part of, in women's boxing, what is a situation where there are more good women fighters. As time has gone on, there have become more women fighters which is a natural evolution, that have been better. Do you see the sport? Do you see more depth in the sport than when you, let's say, started?
I definitely see. You can see the difference from when my sister started to when I started to when it's now. It's amazing, and I'm excited to see where it's gonna go. I know, like I said, I only have 2 to 3 years more max, but when I'm done and retired, it's gonna be an amazing group of women and champions, because we have girls coming from the amateurs coming up to the pro rankings. So I'm super excited, and I'm just glad that I can be one of the pioneers and who opened the doors for these young girls. And that's why you want to continue to fight for your worth and fight for what you deserve. So I'm excited.
Well, you've played a big role in expanding the horizons of women's boxing, and in these next couple of years, I believe you're gonna play a continued and important role in that, for sure.
Thank you.
I hope you get that perfect dream house in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I've been working on it. But I want to truly thank you for all your support for women's boxing, and with guys like you, definitely the sport of women's boxing will rise. And I want to thank you so much. And I promise that the Katie Taylor is gonna happen. I mean, it's not my part, it's not my end, it's their end. I definitely want this fight. It is nothing. We're not afraid of each other. It's just the whole politics, the boxing and business part. But I definitely want that fight so bad.
Trust me, I've been covering boxing for 40 years. That would hardly be the first fight that was hard to make. So
of course, I know.
Plenty of others have been hard to make. So I'm sure with that will and resolve, the two you will get together. And all of us that cover the sport, our resolve should be to do a better job of covering women's boxing, to be more specific and more knowledgeable about all the women that are capable and that know the sports and that are great in the sport. So hey, thank you.
We appreciate
Amanda,
that.
for taking
Thank you. Thank you so much. And like I said, we appreciate you, and just I'm hoping that we can continue to make noise for women boxing, and you can continue to put light into our way. And like maybe if you did mention me that night, maybe people will be like, wait, women fight?
Exactly. Hey, the other thing is, yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, hopefully I'll get to call one of your fights, which would be fun.
Oh, yes. I definitely can't wait for that one.
Down the road. Hey, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you so much. Have a happy new year, and hopefully it's a great new year for all of us. And I wish you nothing but great health and blessings. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
So that was our discussion with Amanda Serrano. And as you can see, she is just a really great person to talk to. And she was gracious in accepting my apology for screwing up the fact that when I said there was only one champion from Puerto Rico, when in reality, of course, she is the one that was born in Puerto Rico. But she was very gracious in accepting my apology. And I really enjoyed my chat with her. And she's a very special person.
Al, you've been doing an amazing job focusing on women fighters lately. We're the Title IX of boxing broadcasts.
Yeah, we had
But
Christy
what
Martin on the show, and now Amanda, and we'll try and do a better job of making sure that that we pay attention to the many
men?
talented women that are boxing in the sport.
No, we've been ignoring the men, Al. We got to get back to them. They need some help. But
They
anyway,
feel persecuted, huh?
yeah. So one of the things that's frustrating to me is when finally UFC decided to have women on the cards. Dana White for years didn't. Boxing doesn't get enough credit for really highlighting women early into combat sports and championing their cause.
Well, they did, but the problem is that, but let's put it this way: boxing had women, but I don't know if they did a good enough job of pushing the sport. And I think the MMA ultimately, because mixed martial arts first in Strikeforce, where they had it, and then UFC, and also now Bellator, they've done a better job, I think, at the end of the day, of promoting the women's side of things. Boxing was more of a trailblazer in kind of having it happen. But boxing's been late to the dance in terms of really, that's why so many of the women, that box are switching over to MMA, like Amanda has done a couple MMA fights. Holly Holm switched over. She was a women's boxing champion, and she made a lot more money in mixed martial arts. So I think boxing, though, now in the last few years, women's boxing has started to gain a better foothold, and the powers that be in the sport are being a little more supportive.
Yeah, and just on a personal level, I'd never done a women's boxing card until I worked with you on a Friday night fight. And boy, it was right off the bat, you could see how exciting it could be.
Yeah, women's boxing, when the women are equally, matched, is very exciting, because you do see fewer knockouts mostly than you see in men's boxing, and I don't mind that at all. I like to see sustained action, and you see that often with the women.
Okay. Our next question comes from Paul Zanin, and it's a fun question. You boxed as an amateur, Al. If you had turned pro, which undercard would you have liked to be featured on? Any year, any era?
Ah, that's interesting. And Paul, of course, a former guest on this show, who wrote the fine book about Johnny Tapia along with Teresa Tapia. So Paul came up with an interesting question. Yeah, needless to say, I didn't get very close to being a professional boxer. I had 2 or 3 dozen amateur fights, and had a few moments of glory, but certainly was not close to being a really good professional. But if I could magically transform myself into somebody that was going to be a pro as opposed to just an amateur, I think the card that I would have wanted to fight on undercard would have been Hagler Hearns, which of course I got to announce. And ironically, the undercard of Hagler Hearns was not a very scintillating undercard. It really wasn't action-packed, and it's fun. So I don't know if I would have contributed to that, but that would be a card I think that would have been great to be a part of, just because of the historical nature of it, and all the rest of it. Now, luckily, I was able to participate by announcing that fight, and it remains to this day. And we are frequently asked questions on this show about it, and it remains to this day, one of the great moments I've had. One of the gentlemen who writes about, or who talks about the style of boxing that leads to great moments, is Tom Yankello, who, if you have not checked out his boxing website or YouTube site, World Class Boxing, you want to do that. It's really fascinating. I know most of you watching this are pretty ardent boxing fans, I'm sure, and you like to know how it's done and what some of the techniques in boxing are, and how different champions have utilized those techniques and those strategies. And Tom's YouTube channel really does that. It'll help. It's great for amateur boxers, which have been around in the years we're talking about back in the Stone Age when I was an amateur boxer. I would have loved to have watched a a video channel like this and seen some of the instructional and technique videos that Tom has. But they're not just for people that want to perform in boxing. You'll find them interesting because they often have historical references to fighters that would have used that style and how they would fight. Well, we're happy that you joined us. Now, we do have some good guests coming up. We can't say exactly when, but we're going to be visited by Snoop Dogg, who is of course, brilliant rap artist, iconic, but also, as you know, he was on the broadcast of the Roy Jones Jr. Mike Tyson match. I would have been working for him, but for the fact that I got COVID-19 and couldn't work on that broadcast. And he has some big plans in the sport of boxing coming up. He's a huge boxing fan, and he will be visiting with us. And we're going to chat with him about that, as well as music and many other things. He is a raconteur and a man about town. And also, Andre Ward is going to be visiting with us in the next few weeks. So we've got some really nice guests on the horizon, and we hope that you will enjoy them. And Trip, I don't know if we're going to get high with Snoop Dogg. That's
well,
still to be
you
determined.
That email and said, is that how you do an interview? But that ship has sailed, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we'll find out. We'll find out whether we do that interview straight or high. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work out. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it. He's a delightful guy, and I know he has a lot to say.
Well, what's funny is you get to a certain point where you're terminally unhip, and I'm going to use the Snoop thing to try to seem a little bit more relevant, I should say, to my nieces and nephews, but I don't think it'll work.
Well, just being on the same podcast as him should do it.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, thanks to Trip for his fine efforts. Thanks to Amanda Serrano for joining us. Thanks to Chris for getting us on the air here and making sure that we stay on the straight and narrow and putting this show together for you. And we will see you next time on Al Bernstein Unplugged.